September 8th, 2025, 2:17 a.m. The Arizona desert was black. Then the radar screens at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base erupted in chaos. Contact, multiple bogeys, bearing 185, altitude 400 feet. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chen leaned forward, her eyes locked on the display. What she saw defied belief. Not one aircraft, not 10, 312 unidentified aerial vehicles moving in perfect formation across the Mexican border. Each one the size of a small car, flying low and fast, hugging the terrain to avoid detection. This was no amateur smuggling operation. This was an airborne invasion. Within seconds, the signature matched intelligence reports that had been classified for months. The Sinaloa cartel had done the impossible. They had built an air force, and tonight they were using it to flood America with the largest single drug shipment in history. A payload worth $4.7 billion. Enough fentanyl to kill 80 million Americans. Enough methamphetamine to supply every addict in the western United States for a year. At the head of this nightmare was a ghost. Miguel El Ingeniero Vasquez, a former aerospace engineer from Monterrey, who had been recruited by the cartel in 2019. In 6 years, he had transformed narcotics trafficking from mules and tunnels into something out of a military thriller. His drones were equipped with Chinese-made lithium batteries, Israeli navigation systems, and composite frames that made them nearly invisible to radar. The DEA had been hunting him for 3 years. Tonight, they would finally catch him. But first, they had to stop his Armada before it disappeared into the American heartland. If you believe America's skies should be defended at all costs, hit that like button before we show you how the greatest aerial drug battle in history unfolded. The call came through encrypted channels at 2:19 a.m. From the White House Situation Room to NORAD headquarters in Colorado, from DEA Command in El Paso to the 162nd Wing at Tucson International Airport. President Donald J. Trump had been briefed 30 minutes earlier. His response was immediate and uncompromising. They think they can invade our airspace. They think we won't see them coming? Show them what American air power looks like. I want every single one of those drones on the ground. Tonight, at 2:24 a.m., he signed the authorization for Operation Desert Hawk, the most complex counter-narcotics aerial operation in American history. The mission: intercept and destroy a cartel drone fleet before it could disperse across the Southwest. The response was immediate. At Davis-Monthan, ground crews sprinted across the tarmac. Within 7 minutes, 6 F-16 Fighting Falcons were airborne, afterburners painting orange streaks across the pre-dawn sky. Above them, an E-3 Sentry AWACS aircraft climbed to 30,000 feet, its rotating radar dish tracking every movement below. But the F-16s weren't alone. From Creech Air Force Base in Nevada, operators in climate-controlled trailers took control of 8 MQ-9 Reaper drones. Each Reaper carried a full payload of AGM-114 Hellfire missiles and 500-pound guided bombs. They were the silent hunters. On the ground, a different force mobilized. DEA tactical teams, Border Patrol BORTAC units, and Arizona National Guard infantry companies raced toward predicted landing zones. Humvees kicked up clouds of dust as they formed a perimeter across 200 square miles of desert. Every road, every trail, every dried riverbed was covered. This wasn't just an interception, it was a siege. At 2:31 a.m., the cartel drones crossed into American airspace. They flew in 3 distinct waves, each separated by 5 miles. The formation was textbook military doctrine, designed to overwhelm defenses and ensure at least some would get through. But they didn't know what was waiting for them. All units weapons free, came the command from the AWACS, engage at will. The sky exploded. The first F-16 dove from 15,000 feet, its targeting computer locking onto the lead wave of drones. The pilot, call sign Viper 1, squeezed the trigger. His M61 Vulcan cannon roared to life, spitting 6,000 rounds per minute. Tracer fire arced through the darkness like a river of light. 3 cartel drones disintegrated instantly. Composite frames shattered. Lithium batteries exploded in brilliant white fireballs. The burning wreckage tumbled toward the desert floor. Splash 3, Viper 1 reported calmly, continuing engagement. The other F-16s followed, each pilot hunting their targets with lethal precision. But there were too many drones and they were scattering. Some climbed higher, trying to escape above the fighters. Others dove low, skimming just 50 feet above the saguaro cacti. That's when the Reapers entered the fight. From 20,000 feet, invisible in the darkness, the MQ-9s began firing Hellfire missiles. Each missile streaked downward on a pillar of flame, guided by laser designators that never missed. The impacts were surgical. 1 drone, 1 missile, 1 kill. Reaper 3, good kill. Target destroyed. Reaper 5, engaging second wave. Fox 3. The night became a light show of destruction. Explosions bloomed across the desert like deadly flowers. The Cartel's formation, so precise minutes before, dissolved into chaos. Drones scattered in every direction, their AI navigation systems overwhelmed. But the Cartels had planned for this. They had built redundancy into their operation. As the first 2 waves were decimated, the third wave split into dozens of smaller groups. Each group of 5 to 10 drones broke away, flying different routes toward Phoenix, Tucson, and Las Cruces. On the ground, DEA agent Marcus Webb watched through night vision as the first Cartel drone crash-landed 300 yards ahead. Its rotors still spinning, it plowed into the sand and came to rest against a boulder. Webb's team moved fast. "Watch for booby traps," he called out. "These things might be rigged." They weren't. What they found was worse. The drone's cargo bay was packed with vacuum-sealed bricks of fentanyl, each brick marked with a blue scorpion logo, the signature of El Ingeniero. Webb did the math in his head. If every drone carried this much, they were looking at over 3 tons of pure fentanyl, enough to kill every person in California. His radio crackled. "All ground units, be advised. Drones are landing hot. Repeat. Hostile forces on site defending cargo." Webb's blood ran cold. The Cartels hadn't just sent drones. They had sent soldiers. 20 miles south, near the town of Arivaca, another drama was unfolding. A cluster of 15 Cartel drones had landed in a dry wash, their cargo already being unloaded by a ground team. But this wasn't some ragtag group of smugglers. These were professionals. Thermal imaging from an overhead Reaper revealed 18 heat signatures, all armed. 2 with what appeared to be RPG launchers. Border Patrol Bortac Team Alpha was closest. They moved in silence, night vision goggles turning the desert into a green-tinted maze of shadows. Team leader Agent Carlos Ruiz raised his fist. His men froze. Ahead, the Cartel soldiers worked frantically, loading bricks of drugs into the beds of pickup trucks. They knew the clock was ticking. They knew the Air Force had destroyed most of the fleet. This was their only chance to salvage something from the disaster. Ruiz keyed his radio. "Command, Alpha Team. We have 18 hostiles heavily armed. Request immediate backup." "Negative, Alpha. All air assets engaged. You are cleared to engage. Ground support en route. ETA 12 minutes. 12 minutes might as well be 12 hours. Ruiz looked at his 5-man team. They were outnumbered 3 to 1, but they were Americans, and they had a job to do. "On my mark," he whispered. 3, 2, 1, execute. Flashbangs detonated in the wash. Blinding white light and deafening noise shattered the night. The Cartel soldiers stumbled, disoriented, reaching for weapons they couldn't see to fire. Bortac moved like ghosts. Suppressed rifles coughed short, controlled bursts. The first 4 hostiles dropped before they knew what hit them. The others scrambled for cover behind the trucks, returning fire wildly. Bullets snapped through the air. One round struck Agent Thompson's ballistic plate, spinning him around. He stayed on his feet, adrenaline overriding the pain. "Contact left," someone shouted. An RPG launcher rose from behind a rock. Ruiz didn't hesitate. His rifle barked twice. The RPG gunner collapsed, the launcher clattering into the sand. The firefight lasted 4 minutes. When the shooting stopped, 14 Cartel soldiers lay in the dirt, hands zip-tied behind their backs. 3 were dead. 1 was critically wounded. 0 Bortac casualties. As National Guard troops arrived to secure the site, Ruiz stood over the pile of seized drugs. Hundreds of pounds, maybe 1,000. He thought about the families in Phoenix and Tucson who would never receive these poison packages. The teenagers who would live instead of overdose. "Good work, Alpha," came the voice over the radio. "Multiple teams reporting similar engagements. We're winning this." But the night wasn't over. While the battle raged across the Arizona desert, another team was closing in on the man who started it all. Miguel El Ingeniero Vasquez had been operating from a ranch 30 miles south of the border in Sonora, Mexico. But DEA intelligence had pinpointed his location, and the Mexican government had given the green light for a joint raid. At 3:45 a.m., 2 Black Hawk helicopters crossed into Mexican airspace. On board were 12 DEA agents and 16 Mexican Marines from the Special Forces Airmobile Group. This was a killer capture mission. The preference was capture. The ranch appeared through the darkness. Guard towers, floodlights, armed sentries patrolling the perimeter. This wasn't a hideout. It was a fortress. The Blackhawks came in fast and low, their door gunners opening fire on the towers. The M240 machine guns roared, shredding wood and steel. Sentries scattered or fell. The helicopters flared, touching down 50 meters from the main building. Agents and Marines poured out, moving in tactical formation toward the compound. Flashbangs shattered windows. Breaching charges blew doors off their hinges. Inside, they found El Ingeniero's command center, a room filled with computer screens showing real-time telemetry from the drone fleet, or what was left of it. 300 blinking dots had been reduced to less than 20. The engineer sat in his chair, watching his empire burn on a dozen monitors. When the door burst open, he didn't run. He didn't fight. He just sat there, hands raised, staring at the screens. Miguel Vasquez, you are under arrest by the United States Drug Enforcement Administration, Agent Lisa Moreno announced, weapon trained on his chest. The engineer looked at her and smiled, a cold, defeated smile. You won, he said in perfect English. But you haven't stopped anything. There are others. There will always be others. Maybe, Moreno replied, cuffing his wrists. But tonight we stopped you. As they led him to the helicopter, explosions lit up the desert to the north, the last of his drones falling from the sky. By 5:30 a.m., the battle was over. The sun rose over the Arizona desert, revealing a landscape transformed into a graveyard. 312 drones, 312 impacts. Wreckage stretched across 200 miles of borderland. Ground teams worked through the morning, cataloging the carnage. The final count was staggering. 3 of 12 cartel drones destroyed. $4.7 billion in narcotics seized. 3.2 tons of fentanyl. 1.8 tons of methamphetamine. 600 kilograms of cocaine. 89 cartel operatives arrested. 14 killed in ground engagements. 0 American casualties. El Ingeniero captured alive at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. The pilots and drone operators returned to a hero's welcome. But there were no celebrations, just quiet satisfaction. They had done their job. In El Paso, DEA Administrator Ann Milgram held a press conference. Behind her, a table displayed recovered drones, bricks of drugs, and weapons seized from the cartel ground teams. Last night, the United States of America sent a clear message, she began. Our skies are not open for business to drug cartels. Our borders are not porous. And when you threaten American lives, you will face the full force of American power. She paused, looking directly into the cameras. This operation represents the largest single interdiction of narcotics in DEA history. But more importantly, it represents the lives saved, families protected, communities defended. Behind the scenes, intelligence analysts were already working the data recovered from El Ingeniero's computers. What they found was chilling. The drone Armada wasn't an isolated operation. It was a proof of concept, a test run for something bigger, plans for larger drones, faster drones, drones with longer range and heavier payloads, and most disturbing, evidence of Chinese aerospace engineers providing technical support and equipment. This wasn't just a cartel. It was a partnership between organized crime and hostile foreign powers, a hybrid threat that blurred the line between law enforcement and national security. 1 week after Operation Desert Hawk, President Trump addressed the nation from the Oval Office. His message was direct. For too long, drug cartels have treated American lives as commodities. They have poisoned our children, destroyed our families, and laughed at our laws. Last week, we showed them that laughter stops at the barrel of an American gun. He outlined new measures, enhanced border surveillance, increased funding for counter-drone technology, and most significantly, the designation of major cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, opening the door for military action against their leadership. We will hunt them in their hideouts. We will freeze their money. We will destroy their infrastructure. And we will never, ever stop until the threat is eliminated. In Mexico, the government was rattled. The raid on El Ingeniero's ranch had been conducted with their permission, but the success of Operation Desert Hawk exposed uncomfortable truths. The cartels had grown so powerful, so technologically advanced, that they could launch military-style operations against the United States. And Mexico had been powerless to stop them. Pressure mounted for deeper cooperation, joint task forces, shared intelligence, combined military operations. The border was no longer just a line on a map. It was a battlefield. Back in Arizona, life slowly returned to normal, but the residents of Nogales, Tucson, and Phoenix knew they had witnessed something historic. The night the sky burned. The night America defended its airspace against an enemy that had grown too bold. At a small ceremony in Tucson, BORTAC agent Carlos Ruiz received the Attorney General's Award for Distinguished Service. As he stood before his colleagues, he thought about that night in the desert, the firefight, the fear, the victory. "We didn't do this for medals," he said simply. "We did it because it was right, because America doesn't bow to criminals. We face them, we fight them, we beat them." The room erupted in applause. Operation Desert Hawk proved several critical truths. First, that drug cartels had evolved beyond simple criminal organizations. They were now paramilitary forces with access to advanced technology and foreign support. Second, that the United States had the capability and the will to respond with overwhelming force. The combination of Air Force fighters, drone strikes, and ground interdiction was devastatingly effective. Third, and most importantly, that the war on drugs had entered a new phase. It was no longer just about seizures and arrests. It was about defending American sovereignty against hybrid threats that combined crime, terrorism, and foreign interference. In the months that followed, similar operations were launched along the southern border. Cartel tunnel networks were destroyed, submarine fleets were hunted, and slowly, painfully, the tide began to turn. Miguel El Ingeniero Vasquez was extradited to the United States, where he faced charges that could result in multiple life sentences. In his first interview from federal custody, he was asked if he regretted what he had done. He looked at the camera and said, "I regret that I underestimated America." That statement, more than any official report, captured the essence of Operation Desert Hawk. A reminder to the world that America's strength lies not just in its weapons, but in its will to protect its people at any cost. As the sun set over the Arizona desert 1 month after the operation, a lone Border Patrol agent stood at the spot where the first cartel drone had crashed. The wreckage had been cleared away, but the scorched earth remained. He thought about the battle, about the agents and airmen who had risked everything, about the families who would never know how close danger had come to their homes. And he thought about tomorrow, because somewhere south of the border, someone was already planning the next attack, building the next fleet, designing the next weapon. But America would be ready, because when the darkness comes, when the enemy rises, when freedom is threatened, Americans stand their ground. Not because it's easy, but because it's right. The agent turned and walked back to his vehicle. Above him, an F-16 streaked across the sky, sonic boom echoing across the desert. A reminder, a promise, a warning. America's skies belong to America, and anyone who forgets that truth will face the same fate as El Ingeniero's Armada. If you believe in the men and women who defend our borders, hit that like button. Share this story so the world knows what happens when America is threatened. Subscribe to see more stories of courage, sacrifice, and victory. And comment below, do you think cartels will try this again? Or have they learned their lesson? Because the next battle is coming, and your voice keeps these stories alive. God bless our troops. God bless America.